Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing half drugstore and half high-end to see if you can spot the difference. Now the whole point of this video is to prove that you don't need high-end makeup to get a flawless looking face, if that makes sense. So the products that I'm using today are not drugstore dupes. They are just drugstore products compared to high-end products that are similar in color, so you can see the difference if there is one, which I hope there's not. The whole point. Let's get straight into it. So for primer on the drugstore side, I'm going to be using the Maybelline Baby Skin Primer, and on the high-end side, I'm going to be using Benefit's Professional. Now, a lot of people have been saying that this is a dupe for the Professional, but honestly, it's really not. That's just what I think. This is so much more silicone-y and like stickier. The other one is more like smooth, silky, and like flawless feeling, if that makes any sense. Now moving on to eyebrows, on the drugstore side, this isn't a drugstore product, but it's very affordable. This is the Mellow Cosmetics Dip Brow Pomade. And on the high-end side, I'm going to be using the Anastasia Beverly Hills Dip Brow in the shade Blonde. Okay, so just using the Mellow Dip Brow, I've just filled in this brow. Honestly, my brows are playing up so much lately. They need to be like waxed. They're so hairy, and I fucking hate them at the moment. Now for the high-end side, I'm just going to be taking my Anastasia Dip Brow. This is probably a lot more, well, it is a lot more dry than the Mallow one, but they both kind of do the same thing in the end. That's just more wet, this is more dry. You know how we all have a good brow and a bad brow? This is my good eyebrow, the other one's just fucked. Now moving on to eyebrow setting gel, I'm going to be using the Rimmel Brow This Way setting gel. And on the high-end side, I'm going to be using Benefit's Gimme Brow. I'm literally just brushing that through my eyebrows. Sorry. And now Benefit's Gimme Brow. This is just going to set my eyebrows in place and tint the blonde hairs that I have in amongst all this hair. Now moving on to concealer, on the drugstore side, I'm going to be using the Maybelline Master Conceal, and on the high-end side, I'm going to be using the Tarte Shape Tape Concealer. I can't talk when I'm doing this. And what I'm going to do is just drag that down a little bit, just so it's easier to blend. Now on the high-end side, I'm just going to take a bit of Shape Tape. This is such a high coverage concealer. It's my new favorite concealer ever. And as you can see, this concealer is a little bit lighter than the other one, but that don't matter because we're gonna make it work. Now just putting a bit more of the Maybelline Master Conceal all over this eyelid because we're gonna be using this as our eye base today, which is what I do with all my makeup looks. I never use eye primer, I just use concealer because I feel like it's just so much better. I'm just going to be blending that out with my damp beauty blender. Now on the drugstore side, this is not a drugstore product, but it's very, very affordable, so same thing. This is the Coty S1 powder, and on the high-end side, I'm going to be using the Laura Mercier setting powder. So just taking some of that Coty S1, I'm just going to be setting all of that concealer to ensure that it does not crease. And I'm just going to be running a bit more of the Shape Tape concealer over that eye and just blending that in. Now just taking my Laura Mercier, I'm just going to be setting all that concealer as well. Now moving on to eyeshadow, on the drugstore side, I'm going to be using this Chi Chi Cosmetics eyeshadow palette. This is the Timeless palette. It's so pretty. And on the high-end side, I'm going to be using the Kylie Cosmetics Bronze eyeshadow palette. So on the drugstore side, I'm just using the Chi Chi Cosmetics palette, obviously. I'm just taking some of this brown shade and kind of putting it through my crease. Now, basically, this palette was not as good as I expected it to be. So many people have hyped up the Chi Chi eyeshadow palettes, and I was so excited. And I'm not gonna lie when I say I have pretty high standards for eyeshadows after using Anastasia, Makeup Geek, and Huda Beauty, but honestly, it was just kind of patchy and it didn't blend out very well. These shadows, this one I'm using right now, is definitely not pigmented at all. And I'm not a very big fan of the Kylie Jenner palette, but honestly, it was so much better than the Chi Chi one. It blended better, it layered up nicely, it was more buttery. I still think the Kylie one is a little bit chalky, but comparing it to the Chi Chi one, it was buttery. Like, oh. So yeah, I'm just doing a bit of an eye look there, but can you tell the difference? I definitely can. Alright, let's go on to the rest of the face. Whew, so now that the eyeshadow is done, let's move on to eyeliner. So on the Drugstore side, I'm going to be using the Maybelline Studio Gel Liner, and on the high-end side, I'm going to be using the Inglot AMC Gel Liner in the shade 77. Now moving on to mascara. Mascara, in my opinion, is just one of those things that every sort of mascara works. It just might have a different effect on your lashes, but regardless, it's still going to be black. So on the Drugstore side, I'm going to be using the Maybelline Great Lash, and on the high-end side, I'm going to be using the Tarteist Mascara. Now the only thing I don't have is Drugstore eyelashes, so I'm just going to chuck a random pair of lashes on, and I'll be right back and we'll continue on with the rest of the face. Okay, so I just chucked some lashes on. Let's move on to the rest of the face. So on the Drugstore side, I'm going to be using the NYX HD Photogenic Foundation, and on the high-end side, I'm going to be using my all-time fave, the Marc Jacobs Remarkable in the shade 54. So let's do Drugstore side first. So I'm just going to put some of that on the back of my hand, well, a lot. And I'm just going to paint that on before blending that out with a beauty blender. Now just taking my damp beauty blender, I'm just going to begin to blend all of that foundation into my hairline and my skin. Now the reason why it's so dark is because I'm matching it to my tan. I have to tell everyone that in every video that I do it, because some people are new and they don't understand why, but I'm tan at the moment, so I'm matching it to my tan. Now moving on to the high-end side, I'm just going to take my Marc Jacobs Remarkable and just put about that much on. That's probably like a lot. For a lot of people, they're probably like, whoa, that would cover my whole face. It probably would, but I'm all about that full coverage sort of life. So I'm just going to begin to blend this into the side of my face. And this should, what I've just put on, cover my whole half of my face. Now just taking my beauty blender, I'm just going to blend all of that in so it is seamless AF. Now to conceal the under eyes, I'm going to be going back to my Maybelline concealer and the Tarte Shape Tape. So what I'm going to do is just put a little bit on each side to make it fair. So this is the Drugstore side. So I'm just going to blend that out before I move on to the other side. And now moving on to the high-end side, I'm just going to take my Shape Tape, and you only need a little tiny bit of this. But do I really listen when people say that? Nope. And now I'm just going to go absolute ham under this eye. Once again, I'm just going to be blending that out with my damp beauty blender. As you can see, this side is a lot more whiter and more high coverage, which is basically you get what you pay for when you buy Drugstore concealers, but they still can be really, really great. Now, moving back onto my translucent powder. For the Drugstore, I'm just going to be using Airspun, and for the high-end, I'm going to be using the Laura Mercier. Now, moving on to powder to set the rest of my face, I'm just going to be using the Australis Fresh and Flawless Pressed Powder. And on the high-end side, I'm going to be using the NARS Pressed Powder. So just setting everything so it does not move. And now on the high-end side, I'm just going to be taking Beach and also setting that. Now I'm just finishing off the eyes, mind that face. I was trying to get it in frame and it just wasn't working. That is the Drugstore side just with the Chi Chi palette. I'm just putting a bit of the brown and a little bit of black just to define it. And then same on the other eye, a bit of the warm brown and then a bit of the black to define it again too. Now that the eyeshadow has all finished, I'm just going to be wiping off that under eye bake. Now, moving on to contouring and bronzing. On the Drugstore side, I'm going to be using the Revlon Sculpt and Highlight Contour Kit. And on the high-end side, I'm going to be using the, obviously, Anastasia Beverly Hills Contour Kit. So, I'm just going to be taking a bit of this shade and a bit of this shade. This is my first time using this, so I don't know how pigmented it's gonna be or how well it's gonna work. But already it blends so well. I'm really impressed already. And obviously just contouring my non-existent jawline a bit. So I'm just gonna be making one of those. And with whatever is left on the brush, I'm just gonna run that down the side of my nose. Now just to bronze up a little bit more, I'm just going to take a little bit of the bronzing shade out of that Revlon kit and just give my cheeks a little bit more warmth. And on the high-end side, I'm just going to warm up my face with a little bit of MAC Give Me Sun. Now moving on to blush, on the Drugstore side, I'm going to be using the Milani Baked Blush in the shade Luminoso. And on the high end, I'm going to be using the Tarte Blush in the shade Blissful. So just popping a little bit on my cheeks and blending backwards. And now just a bit of the Tarte blush and brushing that backwards as well. Now for banana powder, on the Drugstore side, I'm going to be using the Australis banana powder. And on the high-end side, I'm going to be using the Ofra banana powder. Just digging that out of the pan just on this brush here. I'm just going to plop a little bit of that underneath. And a little bit on this side of my forehead just to keep it really bright. And a bit on this side of my chin as well. And now the high-end side, I'm just going to take this one. It's really pigmented, as you can see, like, whoa. Now moving on to my favorite part, which is highlighting. On the Drugstore side, I'm going to be using the Sleek highlighter palette. This is the Celeste palette, I believe. And on the high-end side, I'm going to be using Ofra Beverly Hills. So from the Sleek palette, I'm just going to be taking this shade here and just bam. Oh. And then I'm just going to be doing half of my Cupid's bow. Now moving on to the high-end side, I'm just going to take Beverly Hills. Oh, absolute favorite highlighter ever. Now moving on to lip liner, I'm going to be using the Colourpop lip liner in the shade Oh Snap. And on the high-end side, I'm going to be using the Kylie Cosmetics Dolce K lip liner. Now for liquid lipstick, on the Drugstore side, I'm going to be using Colourpop's Clueless, and on the high-end side, I'm going to be using Kylie Cosmetics Candy K. Now I did not expect them to be this different. They look so similar in the container. So I'm just going to run it over with a bit of the lip liner just to kind of like blend it all in. Which is technically cheating, but it's going to look stupid otherwise. Now for gloss, on the Drugstore side, I'm going to be using the NYX Butter Gloss in the shade Fortune Cookie. And on the high-end side, I'm going to be using the Anastasia Gloss in the shade Butterscotch. And now last but not least, now moving on to setting spray. For the Drugstore side, I'm going to be using the Maybelline Master Fix setting spray. And on the high-end side, I'm going to be using the Gerard Cosmetics Slay All Day. So this is the completed look. I cannot believe how similar it looks. I feel like I've done such a good job. I'm so proud of myself. I really enjoyed making this video. As long as it took, it was so worth it. This just proves so much. So if you guys did enjoy this video, or if you are new here, make sure you give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you are not already. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye! So